Is the Texas housing market headed for a crash? Are foreclosures really increasing? And with buyers having more choices and some homes sitting on the market longer, are we officially moving into a buyer's market? Well, the May 2026 numbers are in, and depending on where you live in Texas, the answer may be very different because the real estate market here in Lubbock does not look exactly like Dallas-Fort Worth. Dallas-Fort Worth does not look like Austin. And Houston and San Antonio are each telling us something very different about where the Texas housing market may be headed next. So today, we're going to break down the May 2026 housing market numbers across Texas, and we'll start with the overall Texas market. Then we'll take a look closer at my home market here in Lubbock, move into Dallas-Fort Worth, and then compare Austin, Houston, and San Antonio, and finally, we'll talk about something that I think every homeowner, buyer, seller, and real estate investor should be paying attention to right now. Foreclosures and mortgage delinquencies are increasing. But does that mean we're headed towards another 2008? Let's look at what the numbers actually are telling us. Hey, so let's go ahead and start with the big picture. The Texas housing market in 2026 is not one single market. We're seeing very different conditions depending on the city, the price point, and even the individual neighborhood. But there are several trends showing up across much of the state. First, buyers generally have more choices than they did during the pandemic housing boom. Second, homes are taking longer to sell in many markets. Third, buyers are becoming much more price sensitive. And fourth, sellers are increasingly having to compete not only with resale homes, but in many areas with new construction builders offering incentives, buyer rate downs, closing cost incentives, and assistance. So while Texas is not experiencing a statewide crash, we're currently in a very different market than we were a few years ago. The days of simply putting a home on the market and almost at any price and immediately receiving multiple offers are largely behind us. So today, price matters, condition matters, marketing matters, and in many markets, seller concessions matter. The May numbers across our major Texas metros show just how different these markets are becoming. But raw sales volume does not tell us the entire story. We also need to look at inventory, pricing, sales that are pending, days on the market, and how much buyers are actually willing to pay compared with the seller's asking price. And that brings us to my home market of Lubbock, Texas. Let's talk about Lubbock. According to the May 2026 market report from the Lubbock Association of Realtors and the Lubbock Metropolitan Statistical Area, they recorded 551 closed sales. That was an increase of about 4.1% compared to May of last year. The median sales price is $249,925, which is down 4.1% year over year. Now that combination is very interesting. We had more homes selling, but at a lower median price. This is exactly why I always tell buyers and sellers not to look at just one number. A declining median sales price does not automatically mean that the entire market is collapsing. The median sales price can also be affected by the types and price ranges of homes that just happen to sell during that particular period. So now let's look at inventory. Lubbock had 1,672 active listings in May. That's almost unchanged from 1,683 active listings we had 1 year ago. Months of inventory stood at 3.8 months. Traditionally, somewhere around 6 months of inventory has been considered a more balanced market. So 3.8 months, Lubbock is not exactly behaving like a deeply oversupplied buyer's market. But this is important. That does not mean that sellers can just name their price. The average sales price list ratio is 96.8%. In other words, the average homes are selling below asking price, and homes are taking approximately 79 days total on the market. So buyers have more time to think, more opportunities to negotiate, and they're paying very close attention to value. But one of the biggest numbers in the entire Lubbock report was pending sales. Lubbock had 760 pending sales, an increase of 22.4% from the previous year. This is really significant. Pending sales can give us an indication of future closing activity. And at 22.4% of an increase, that suggests that buyer demand is there. It's moving forward. So, what does that mean for Lubbock? I would like to describe Lubbock as an active but price sensitive market. Buyers are buying, homes are selling. Pending activity is strong, and buyers are not necessarily willing to overpay. For sellers, the strategy in 2026 needs to be very different from the strategy of 2021 or 22. The first 2 to 3 weeks on the market can be extremely important. Your pricing needs to be competitive from the beginning. Your home needs to show well. And your marketing needs to make your property stand out against the resale, the competition, and the new construction. For buyers, there may be opportunities to negotiate closing costs, repairs, and other concessions depending on the property. But with only 3.8 months of inventory, the best homes can still attract attention. Now, let's move east to Dallas Fort Worth. DFW remains one of the largest and most attractive housing markets in Texas, and the broader market trend here in 2026 shows something we are seeing in many parts of the state. Buyers have more choices, they are more sensitive to pricing, and they have more opportunities to negotiate than they did during the pandemic. And at the same time, Dallas Fort Worth remains a massive and highly diverse market. Conditions in Fort Worth can differ from Dallas. Conditions in the suburbs can also differ than the more established neighborhoods. And one price range may behave very differently from another. So when we talk about the DFW market, we have to remember that a metro-wide number does not necessarily describe what is happening with one specific home or neighborhood. All over, DFW appears more stable than some of the Texas markets that experienced the most dramatic pandemic era appreciation and correction. But the market is still correcting. A home can be located in a strong Texas market and still sit if it's overpriced. And that is one of the biggest themes I see across Texas in 2026. The question is no longer simply, is the market good? The better question is this particular home priced correctly for its specific neighborhood, condition, price range, and competition? That distinction is becoming increasingly important for both buyers and sellers. Let's check out the DFW numbers for May 2026. We had 9,233 closed sales. The median sales price is sitting at 400,000. Active listings is sitting at 34,220 units, and your average days on the market is 56. Months of inventory currently is 4.4, and we're getting 95.7% of the original list price. Now, let's talk about Austin. Austin has been one of the most closely watched housing markets in the country because it really experienced a tremendous amount of growth during the pandemic. And then with one of the more visible market corrections, yes. So in May 2026, Austin Round Rock San Marcos market recorded just under 3,000 closed sales, 2,953 to be exact. That was down 3.4% from the previous year. The median sales price is 440,000, down approximately 0.9%, so it's just under 1%. Pending sales reached 3,310, which was actually up 14.3%. Active listings stood at 12,508, and the market had approximately 4.7 months of inventory. Sellers are receiving an average of approximately 94.5% of the listing price. Austin is a fascinating market right now. Closed sales are down, prices are slightly down, but pending sales are up. At the same time, active inventory was lower than the previous year. That could indicate that Austin is moving through another phase of its market adjustment. Buyers still have meaningful negotiation power, but the market may be beginning to absorb some of the excess inventory that built up during the correction. So for sellers, pricing remains extremely important. And for buyers who are priced out of Austin during the pandemic boom, the current market may offer opportunities that simply did not exist a few years ago. Now let's move to Houston. The greater Houston area recorded 8,631 single family home sales in May. This was down approximately 3.2%. The median single-family home sales price was approximately $340,000, showing that Houston's pricing has remained relatively stable. Houston had 37,619 active single-family listings. Months of inventory stands at 5.1, and pending single-family home sales increased to 5.8%. Homes are taking approximately 54 days to sell. Houston is moving closer to what many would consider a balanced market. Buyers have more choices. Sellers face more competition, but the market has not experienced a broad price deterioration. And one of the more interesting parts of Houston is that it has been the strength of certain high-end segments. So again, we see the importance of understanding that there is no one single housing market, even within one metro area. Different neighborhoods and different price ranges can behave very differently. Houston's main numbers show a market where buyers have more negotiating room, but demand certainly not disappeared yet. Now let's talk about San Antonio. San Antonio recorded approximately 3,637 closed sales in May. Median price was approximately $306,000. There were approximately 17,211 active listings. Pending sales stood at approximately 3,050, and the market was sitting at around 6 months of inventory. Of the major Texas markets we're discussing, San Antonio appears to offer some of the strongest negotiating opportunities for buyers right now. With a substantial number of active listings and inventory around the traditional balanced market range, sellers face meaningful competition. For buyers, that can create opportunities for sellers. Pricing correctly at the beginning is more important than ever. And again, this does not mean that every home in San Antonio is losing value. It means buyers have choices. And when buyers have choices, they become much more sensitive about price, condition, location, and value. Now, let's get to the part of this report that may concern a lot of people. Foreclosure activity is increasing. According to May 2026 national foreclosure data, approximately 40,355 U.S. properties received some type of foreclosure filing during the month. That's down 5% from April, but up 14% compared to May of the previous year. So approximately 27,304 properties started the foreclosure process, which is an increase of 13% year over year. And approximately 4,092 properties completed the foreclosure process, which is up 6% annually. Texas was among one of the states with the higher overall levels of foreclosure activity. Now, those numbers deserve attention, but I want to be very, very careful here. An increase in foreclosures does not automatically mean we're headed towards another 2008. Today's housing and mortgage market is very different. Many homeowners still have substantial equity. Many homeowners also have low fixed mortgage rates. And overall, foreclosure activity remains below pre-pandemic levels, but there are real signs of financial stress for some homeowners. Households are dealing with higher insurance costs, higher property taxes, higher consumer debt, higher costs of everyday living. And in some cases, homeowners who need to sell are discovering that their homes may no longer sell for what they expected. This is why early intervention matters. If a homeowner begins missing mortgage payments, one of the worst things they can do is ignore the situation. Depending on the homeowner's equity and financial circumstances, selling before the property reaches foreclosure may provide more options and may help protect the equity of which they have built. Mortgage delinquencies are also showing signs of increased homeowner stress. The national mortgage delinquency rate rose approximately 3.5% in May of 2026. Now, part of that monthly increase may have been influenced by the calendar because May 31st fell on a Sunday, but the broader trend still deserves attention. Other mortgage data sets have also shown increases in certain measures of delinquency and foreclosure activity. Now, these percentages can come from different mortgage data sets, and they should not be directly compared as though they were measuring exactly the same group of loans. But together, they tell us something important. Financial pressure on some homeowners is increasing. Again, this does not mean the Texas housing market is collapsing, but it is a trend that buyers, sellers, investors, homeowners, and real estate professionals will all be watching closely. So, after looking at all of these numbers, is the Texas housing market crashing? Well, based on May 2026 data, I would say no. But the market is changing, and depending on where you live, that change can look very different. Lubbock showed increasingly closed sales at a significant increase in pending contracts, while maintaining only 3.8 months of inventory. Dallas-Fort Worth remains a large and relatively resilient market, but buyers have become more selective and pricing matters. Austin continues to work through its post-pandemic correction, but pending sales increased. Houston remained relatively balanced with stable pricing, increasing in pending activity. San Antonio appears to offer some of the strongest negotiation opportunities for buyers among the markets we reviewed. And at some time, foreclosures and mortgage delinquencies are increasing. That does not mean that 2008 is repeating itself all over, but it does tell us that some homeowners are increasingly in financial pressure. The biggest takeaway from the May 2026 Texas housing market is we are no longer in a market where one strategy works everywhere. This is a market of local conditions. A buyer in Austin may have a very different experience from a buyer here in Lubbock. A seller in San Antonio may need a very different pricing strategy from a seller in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And even within the same city, one neighborhood or price range can perform very differently from one another. For buyers, this market may provide more choices, more opportunities to negotiate. For sellers, accurate pricing, presentation, and marketing are absolutely critical. And for homeowners who are struggling financially, the most important thing is to understand your options early before the situation becomes a crisis. Now, I'm Kimberly Conley with the KC Smart Home Team at eXp Realty, helping relocating executives, medical professionals, families, and buyers find the right home and lifestyle here in Lubbock. If you're thinking about moving to Lubbock and want to learn more about the neighborhoods, local lifestyle, and hidden gems around town, I'd love to help. Grab my free Moving to Lubbock relocation guide. The link is in the description below. And oh, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single video. Thanks for watching. Ciao for now.